Hey guys, taking a little drive down the road here, so enjoy the sky as I talk. I'm gonna wait for somebody to pop in, I think. Anybody, maybe I'll just ramble a little bit too. So Denny Pate, I saw a little quick glimpse of Denny Pate's reply. I didn't see him speak, I just saw the comment, reading in that CNN article. It's a CNN article that had to do a retraction and a correction already. But they're attacking let me just look at my road here. They're attacking the report, the OSHA report. Awesome. Denny Pate puts his foot in his mouth. How do you attack the OSHA report? What part do you disagree with? What exact part do you disagree with? You're now telling me you have the ability to analyze the situation now that you had none before. You had no idea where the cracks came from. None. And now all of a sudden you can come forward and say this report is wrong. How is that possible? You have nothing to offer about how the cracks presented themselves. Don't know is what we understand. His comments basically were that he did not know how these cracks came about. So now the investigation took a year, and they come up with their theory of how the failure happened. Of course, that's in the post-tensioning transverse cables, not being able to transfer the loads back out to the diaphragm. Okay. So this is very interesting that Denny Pate can come forward and now argue just out of nowhere. They don't know what they're wrong. Can we argue for Denny Pate? Why should we? Why should I argue for Denny Pate in this case? Because he's not. Why should I make an additional argument for him? I could make some additional arguments, but why should I add additional arguments for him? He didn't add what specifically was wrong with the report. So why should I extrapolate and strain my brain on what's wrong with the report for Denny Pate and Linda Figg? They didn't want to add to it all these months of silence. So I take offense that he's trying to use a narcissist trick of just stating that, oh, the report is just no good. He's talking for what's wrong in the report. If he wants to say what's wrong in the report, he should just come out and say what's wrong with the report. He has lawyers. They should come out and say what's wrong with the report. Somehow, not using him, however they come up with it. So that's my quick loaded video about Denny Pate and Linda Figg, with their Figg Engineering, slandering the report without having any real slandering the report. Maybe that's a little strong. Without attacking the report without saying specifics. Be specific. What's wrong with his calculations? What's wrong with them? That means you reviewed them, and you knew about OSHA and how they were working this all this time, and you didn't slip anything out. You were waiting for a home run. So what does this tell us? This tells us that the report has triggered Linda Figg and Denny Pate actually come out of their shell and start speaking up, which is awesome. Because now, what did they expect? They wanted a total cover-up job where we don't know what happened. Obviously, that's what they would prefer. And so when they started pointing fingers, now all of a sudden we have Denny Pate not liking it. Berger didn't come forward. MCM did with their slight comment. Berger did not. Now the other people seem to be mute at this point. Also. All right, so I don't see anybody here. I don't know if this is live or how this is working, but this is the extent of these comments. Let's see. I'll take another minute to. I don't want to give away too much of what I'm going to talk about in the report over the next few days. I want to release maybe one, maybe two a day. I don't want to give away too much. I am Hoff. I'd like to see him back in here. He was awesome, guys. He sent me a nice donation, told me that I should enjoy that with my wife, and not just helping out, how I help out elderly people. So, thank you, all for that. And that is the intent, and that's what your intent will be honored. I'm gonna pick her up now, and she should be very happy. Thank you. What else? What else? Anybody just popped in? So, you just popped in. Obviously, you can't rewind, I guess. So, it says I have to rotate device back. So let's see if I can see comments at all. I don't know how this works. Bear with me. I don't know how this works. Let's see. Welcome to live chat. I don't know how that works. All right. So all I'm talking about here is that Denny Pate had a lot of heart coming forward now. And I don't mean in a nice way. Denny Pate had a lot of balls to come forward now and speak up against the OSHA report when for a year now, over a year, they couldn't give us any data. But now he's using a narcissist trick of just saying, that's just wrong. The report is wrong. Well, tell us how it's wrong. Tell us how magically you were not able to evaluate the cracks over a year now, not able to resolve anything and tell us anything. And now all of a sudden you can come forward and say that this report has some wrong data in it. Well, I'm sure the report has some data that could be corrected. And Denny Pate, with his bright ass, could come forward and say it needs to be corrected in his capacity. Tell us how it can be corrected. Denny Pate should tell us how this report can be corrected, so we can see now how he's thinking on this structure and how it failed. Tell us how it didn't fail in that capacity. Remember, I just read a video 2 days ago, just 2 days ago, saying, or was it yesterday? I'm confused with these releases I'm doing. How I stated that no one can come forward, that they'll never be able to come forward and say what happened to the bridge because they'll be admitting they know how it failed now, and that would be a sign of negligence. Because if you can figure out how it failed now, that means you could have figured out how it failed then, before it happened. That you just rushed to judgment with your decisions and your process. So Denny Pate, that's a paper tiger, if you will. That was just pure narcissist, nasty trick of stating that the OSHA report is no good. Well, perhaps the OSHA report, again, could do some repairs, but he should step forward and tell us how to repair it. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me correctly. I don't know how. I'm looking at this live in a view. So if you guys are commenting, I don't see anything. Okay. So if you got anything to say, I'm going to address it. Otherwise, I'm going to do quite a few releases over the next few days, addressing the images we have and part of the report also. But I'm biased, so I won't be talking bad about the report now too much. I'll be beating around the bush if I have anything of concern in the report. A couple of things I saw pop up. But like for example, you could find a couple of typos or I don't know if it's grammatical errors you would say. For example, the post-tensioning, I think in number 3, longitudinal tensions, D3, I think they called for, in the report, 10, I'm driving, right? So 10 tendons were there. I looked at the 2017 plans and it still says 19, as I recall. So that's just a 0 and a 9 getting mixed up when they typed. I'm sorry, that would be a typo then. So when someone went to load the report, obviously that was not a screen capture in this report. They literally wrote out the document. They typed a 0 instead of a 9 there. You know, little things like that where I find in the report that have some little things. But the logic behind the report is the logic behind the report. You know, if Denny Pate wants to come forward and show how he thinks it failed, awesome. He should do such. He should do such. And now we'll all know, without giving Denny Pate immunity, how he thinks the bridge failed. I don't want to give away everything, but I'll give away that I'm going to do videos over the next few days that show, well, I don't want to give it away. I don't want to give it away before any other forum grabs it. I do want to give it away then. So let's see, my man I am Hoff has it. I gave it to him in an email. That's pretty cool. Hoff took care of me, and his wife too. So I'm trying to beat around the bush on this. So I can explain through failure most of the cracks that we see in this report now. And I want to do this building up over the next couple of days, not for dramatic reasons, but to add the data first, and then at the end show how that data comes to this conclusion, showing you the load path failure. Although I gave most of you guys the load path failure in my video, stating how basically it's just basically we're just looking at elongation in the longitudinal tendons. This is basically what the report said also, that the longitudinal tendons, the zones couldn't take it. And I talked to that with, I think it's Mark. And I feel like Mark's in another country or in Europe or something. It might have been somebody else. I'm waiting for him to chime in to say, yeah, it was me. I'd have to go back in the comments to find it. All right, so but there's a but to this. And I stated in another video too, that and you guys can comment if you like, I think I might better see it, and I'm driving, that, gotta get my train of thought, bear with me, that I don't want to give away too much, because I need to give it this backstory. So I've already mentioned how detensioning 2 and 11 in the order, first tensioning 2 and 11 in the order they did it would have taken, I said, recapture the stresses once they detensioned it. So they did, and I did a video on it, where they did the deck, right? D1 and D1, L and R, left and right, as they now refer to it as, I think. And then they went to the canopy, C1, correction. Then they went to, well, you guys, you have to find a video where I talked about it. They go to C1 and C2, and then they went to number 2 and number 11 post-tensioning. And this is where I state, and I might have got this wrong. Maybe they went from the deck no, I think they went from the deck to C1, C2 in the canopy. And then they went to 2 and 11. So I'll leave reserve to correct that. But nevertheless, my theory is when they post-tension 2 and number 11, that those 2 and 211 did take forces off the deck. In fact, it put a crown in the deck, if you could imagine. This is how I visualized it. 2 and 11 did. The 2 and 11 act as I said in video a year ago, a shear panel, if you will, and it crowned the deck. So imagine it crowning the deck, the forces in 2 and 11, pulling up the center of the deck. All right, so hogging it, creating a crown. And then they commence to post-tension the rest of the canopy, the rest of the decking, all D2 through D6, and all of the transverse post-tension cables. Now imagine that now that's done, and they do the transportation of the structure. They put it in place. They then detension 2 and 11. What happens when you detension 2 and 11? Remember, in the beginning, it created this crowned effect in my theoretical visual of this. And when you detension 2 and 11, you now take off those forces that created the crown. Those loads are then recaptured, as I call it, back into the structure. The structure was not designed to take this recapture of the loads from 2 and 11, the crowning, if you will. It then put the loads into the transverse cables and also the longitudinal cables and the canopy, obviously. Those forces, and this is where I don't want to give away my rest of my load path, but I mean, I'm going to go this far with the load path because I've given this way already. Those forces cause the flexural break in the deck between 10 and 11, 12. And well, before it caused that break, it did cause a deflection. And I gave this away in the previous video, so I'm not giving away anything extra yet. And that deflection exhibited itself in what the shear forces or the shear break you see in the back of the canopy. And I don't want to, and remember I had an issue with this. If you guys remember, I kept saying, if you leave my comments anyway, with I feel like it's Mark that was dominating most of this conversation, that I still need a balance, you know, because I still don't have a balance. And I even wrote something like, well, you know, when they were doing the deck, the bridge on the side of the road, the sun was parallel with the construction. So the cables are subject to heat and expansion from heat. And then when they put it in perpendicular to the sun, that perhaps the shading of the canopy created a different expansion of the post-tension cables. I even went that far writing that. But now I don't go that far. Above it. I have to look for an image of looking for ductwork this night. I've already made that content, but it's not refined yet. I don't think it, and besides, it would overwhelm you. It's probably 4 hours already. You know me and lack of sleep. So I will show that. I will show how the rest of the cracks developed, and it will just be tying in basically what I'm saying. But I will tie in some other beautiful stuff that the images show that no one else is presenting at this point. One of them is very, very interesting to me, and I don't want to share it yet. I want to build up to that one because that's going to be that's the one I gave a hint in the previous video in the comments. And I kind of enjoy giving the hint because I know the other forums are watching, and it'll be fun to try to see if they could figure out the hint and post it. If they do, I'll clearly say that, hey guys, that's it. Now I'm not doing a trick or anything else. Hoff already has an email of the completed hint. I am Hoff. He has the completed email of what I'm playing with my comments. All right, so if anybody has anything to say, say it, or as they say, forever hold your peace, or not really. You can mention in the comments. I'm going to bounce off, but before I do, you know, that's a summation of everything. Okay, I'll add that Denny Pate, you know, if he's willing to talk, he should be willing to answer questions. You know, that's the way it works. If you're taking the fifth, then take the fifth. But once you start opening your mouth, you're no longer taking the fifth. Answer questions. You're no good, you know, whatever it may be. So, you know, take the fifth or don't take the fifth, but you can't take the fifth and speak up. It's taking the fifth using the NTSBs behind there. And that's my trigger on that one. So tell us your intentions on when you said post-tension 2 and 11. You know, was it really just he wanted to recapture, I think, and go back in time to when the structure had the crown back in it. Remember, I described this only a few minutes ago. Anybody coming to this video, you got to jump forward like 5 minutes to catch the beginning of it, and I'll edit it when I get back to the desktop. So yeah, we're looking at the beautiful sky. You guys are as I'm driving. I don't want to bore you with traffic and stop and go. So where are we now? That's about it. If you got any comments, back to the post-tensioning of 2 and 11. So their intent, I believe, to post-tension 2 and 11 was to put that crown back into the structure, which would then put everything copacetic with the cracks you see in the back of the deck. I'm really going to go into those cracks in depth for you guys. Anything anybody want to say before I go? Oh wow, a couple people just popped in. It shows now how many people popped in. 4. If anybody want to say anything to me, please comment. I think it's to the right. I don't know if it's able to do it. If you want to say something, I'll adjust the comment right now. So I know it's a delay, so I have to wait before I basically exit. I'd love to answer any questions if you have any. Waiting. I've got a couple of videos I'm going to post on the report, and all right, just waiting for any comments. I don't know the lag time on this with the video. Comments, video comments. I'll say this, that the OSHA report did use a different formula to arrive at some of its conclusions with with the with the failure, and that's the software they used, and they used that company. And maybe they have a reason behind it, obviously, not to use the same software, or maybe they use the same software and came to the same A-OK, so they use a different software. But don't you find it very interesting that Berger used one engineer to review everything on such a major project? So this engineer had nobody to play devil's advocate with him. Berger's engineer had no one to play devil's advocate. Such a dramatic structure, and one engineer, Berger, decided it was worth. So what is that kind of weird? That's kind of weird, isn't it? Now that engineer is worthy of going to look at his history, his skill set, because this is the engineer, based on the report, that stated that you should add more post-tensioning in the canopy, that a few things should have been done, like adding post-tensioning to 2 and 11, or was it 11 that had none, that you're going to add a bar to it. So it would be interesting to see why he added that bar. Did he also, about transportation, deal with the transportation of the structure, knowing that where the transporters were going to be? And it's kind of interesting because the transporter conversation, if we bring that up, that's actually a private company, I think in Germany or whatever they are, that Barnhart deals with, that they hand over the plans, basically outsourced, and that company would tell how to set up the transporter and and how to maneuver, etc., what speed, everything. Interesting though, twice they mentioned about the change in that report, because I did a comment about why the change on the bridge, and they said snug or something, snug the change up, right? So no amount of torque was added, no amount of tension was told, snug. But then they referenced again in that same transportation report of transporting the bridge that the change should be secured, like really, now it made it as if the change should have some more force applied, but no mention of how much force. I find the change being added just crazy, ridiculous, and dangerous, because it's an unknown factor. You'd have to factor in, why do you need the change? If you did the right cribbing, why the change? Are you saying that the bridge is going to tilt? If it's going to tilt, why don't you monitor the change then, so we'll know if the change went into tension on one side of the bridge or the other? Because remember, guys, chains work in tension. You can't really compress a chain, can you? I give you a loose chain and stand it up in the air, you can go at the bottom of it and start lifting it up. It has zero ability to compression. Well, I guess the resistance of the weight and the weight of the chains, the resistance of that. But chains work under tension. So if they chain each side of this structure, and he was insisting on the change, which they did, then wow, that the movement, the flexing of the structure makes the change then activate. Once they activate, they're going to be pulling at the canopy or wherever they're secured. Some of them were secured on the Barnhart transporter, and some were secured on the deck, on the curbing. And remember, the curbing translates to being secured to the transverse cables. I got 24 minutes into this video. I don't want to bore you guys, and I'm not getting feedback with comments. So I appreciate you listening, but I want people to watch the video, so I better exit, and this time I'll wait, I don't know, 30 seconds before I take off on you guys. Again, if you're watching now, you're going to back up, unless you have something to say. So if anyone's something to say, please say it. And from now, I'll go like 30 seconds. And then I'll terminate.